Okay, so in the first video for chapter 19, I kind of rushed a little bit through this end of section 2, so just to go back to this again, like I said, in these later stages in what's known as the Pleistocene, it's a period of sort of cycles of warm and cool periods and the formation of lots of ice, these ice ages during these cool periods, and then warmer during what are known as the interglacials. Woolly mammoths have inhabited the earth for much of this recent time, and now extinct. People as well for about the same time period, although we fortunately are still here. And so again, this clock analogy showing us from the formation of the earth, cooling of the earth, first life, first photosynthesis, changing of the atmosphere because of that, formation of eukaryotes, then multicellular organisms, animals, plants, etc. So now, what are the factors around the world that have an impact on the evolutionary process? Well, continental drift or plate tectonics. At one time we had Pangaea, the supercontinent, you can see, about 225 million years ago. And with the movement of the plates, the continents began to drift and separate from each other. And so while it was one landmass, and so the plants and animals could potentially inhabit all this landmass, once they started separating from each other, and for example, Africa and South America separating from each other, now the organisms that at one time were on the same landmass are now at separate landmasses, and that can impact how those different groups of organisms now evolve and begin to diverge from each other. As the continent drifts apart as well, you also get more edge, more coastline than you did when you had the supercontinent. That creates in particular more habitat for organisms that inhabit coastal areas. And so indeed, plate tectonics is what causes these continents to move around. Essentially the crust, the plates contain the continents are floating on the mantle below, and we have some places where there are breaks in the crust, and some of this magma that's in the mantle comes to the surface, and we know these as volcanic eruptions, which sometimes happen sort of in a continuous state like they do in the Earth's along the mid-Atlantic. There's a separation there between the plate that basically Europe is on and North America is on, and so there's just a constant flow of that material to the surface. And then other times, like these volcanic mountains where we get dramatic eruptions like what happened in 1980, Mount St. Helens in Washington, where the top of the mountain was basically blown off in a very violent eruption. And there's those plates, the major fault lines between plates. And so again, you can see one running down the Atlantic. Basically, Europe and North America are getting further apart. San Andreas Fault, where Southern California is, that chunk of North America is basically drifting off to the northwest. You've got this fault, this plate that basically sits underneath most of the Atlantic, and along the fault line there you've got a lot of volcanic activity, a lot of earthquake activity, and that ring of volcanoes that kind of surrounds the Pacific is known as the Ring of Fire, with there Hawaii right in the middle with its volcanic activity. Alright, so the changes that have occurred on the Earth have allowed, in some cases, organisms to diversify, but in other cases it's decreased the number of species, and we've gone through a number of mass extinctions here. You can see there's thought to be about 5 major mass extinctions. About 65 million years ago, this one that caused the dinosaurs to go extinct, presumably. You can see as well the number of mammals declined at that time period, but mammals were able to survive and diversify since then. The insects you can see here in this one, they've gone through periods of more or less of them, but have had overall a general increasing in types. So the Earth is constantly changing. It affects the life on Earth, and some organisms are favored, you might say, and diversify, and others not so much. Okay, that's chapter 19.